Yo, Devy Junkies, Brandon here, host of the Devy Deep Dive podcast and creator of the Devy Dashboard. Welcome to the second Devy Huddle show. This is going to be a live feed show every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to talk about past weekend's games. We're going to talk about some player performances. Tonight, I'm joined by some of my great Dashboard supporters. We're creating this really for the Dashboard and anybody on the YouTube channel who wants to watch us talk all about Devy football. All right, so let me introduce the crowd tonight. I got Daniel, I got Rich, I got Christian, and I got Joe. Welcome, gentlemen. How are we feeling tonight?
Feeling great.
Good. What's going on, guys?
Awesome. Yeah, we're gonna have a good time. This is gonna be a relaxed, casual kind of chat. We're hoping to get some questions out there since this is a live feed. I think it is. It's the first time I've done it on YouTube. Don't know if it's happening or not. I think it is. But tonight we're going to discuss 4 topics. We're going to talk about the 2022 and 2023 quarterbacks. All right. That's going to be our first kind of segment that we're going to talk about. Then we're going to do like a stock watch segment. All right. And we're going to we've each chosen a player that we're going to talk about whether their stock may have gone up or down after the first week. And then we're going to have a burning question of the week that you'll have to just wait and see what that question is. And we all have an answer for that as well. And if we have time later in the show, we're going to talk about the week 2 games. We were just talking pregame, how awful they look compared to this past week. So we were having a hard time actually coming up with a schedule of games that actually was of interest. I think there's maybe one we were talking about that we were excited to watch. But anyway, let's get to the show. All right, we're going to talk about the 22 quarterbacks first. All right, and then we're going to talk about the 2023 quarterbacks. So let's first talk about Spencer Rattler, everybody. All right, so he was, he had 30 of 39. He had 304 yards, 1 TD, 2 picks. The rushing yards aren't worth anyone talking about. I think there was a little bit of concern about Rattler's performance, although the yardage and the TD was nice. Those 2 picks and his gunslinger mentality was on full display, I think, for his first week. Christian, what did you think about Rattler's performance?
I mean, to me, it's pretty much, par for the course for Rattler. Rattler's kind of a volatile quarterback like this. I mean, we love him for his athletic traits and his big arm. And when you look at his stat line, 30 of 39, that's a good day, as far as completions go. The yardage was good, but the 2 turnovers and just some plays that really leave you scratching your head are what frustrates us about Rattler. So I'm not overly surprised by his performance. If you watch him a lot, he's this kind of quarterback, but he's definitely one of these guys that gives you a headache because you wish he would just be a little bit more consistent. And, we wish over the season that, from last year to now that we would see some improvement, but it looks like the same old guy. So I think that's why we're a little frustrated.
Yeah, I think we were looking for a little bit more playing within himself and not being such a gunslinger out there, being a little bit more protective with the football. Anyone else have any thoughts on the performance?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So I agree with Christian. I was hoping for some better decisions being made, but I mean it was typical Rattler. He was slinging the ball all over the place. He's going to put the ball in harm's way. Sometimes he's going to get away with it, and then you got to live with those interceptions. I think that he can get away with it for the most part in college, but he's going to have to learn when he moves to that next level. Everything's just a little bit faster. The windows are a little bit smaller. So that's just kind of my view on that.
Yeah, I was expecting more, to be honest. I was hoping that we would see a little bit more improvement from some of the areas he struggled last year. Didn't really see a whole lot of that. It kind of looked like those same issues that plagued him last year that we were talking about as, things that we wanted to see improvement in, and certainly things that scouts, I'm sure, want to see improvement in. I didn't see a whole lot of that. It's more disappointing to me because it was not a heady opponent he was playing against. I don't think Tulane is known for powerhouse defense, though. Those turnovers were a little bit head scratching. I think he was trying to do too much, and he still made some great throws, and I still have a lot of hope that he can bounce back in a big way. But I was disappointed that it wasn't a little bit more of a clean performance overall.
Yeah, and you guys know I put out on the dashboard too. It's just like we don't want to overreact, right? And I talked about that on my podcast. We don't want to overreact too far to he's no good anymore or whatever for especially some of these players. So let's talk about Sam Howell, right? Last week when we talked on this show, I had spoken about this was the game I wanted to watch because I wanted to see what Sam Howell did with the loss of his weapons, his 2 receivers, his 2 backfield mates as well. He had a rough go, 17 to 32, 208. Those 3 picks weren't very good ones. I think he made some bad decisions. I thought he ran the ball a little too often. But a lot of people now, I'm not going to overreact. Joe, what were your thoughts? Did you have a chance to see that game?
Yeah, I saw some highlights and I went back and watched a little bit of it. He really did make a lot of bad decisions in that game, but I think part of it was, Virginia Tech by no means does not seem like a big competitor in the ACC, but I think he made a few mistakes early on, and frankly, he just got rattled because he doesn't have a lot of chemistry with the guys that are on the team now. So he didn't have that go-to weapon, like a Diami Brown or someone that he could go to kind of get him out of his funk. And frankly, he just never got out of it.
Yeah, I don't think his offensive line gave him any help either. He looked like he was, pretty uncomfortable. And as we've talked about before, the running game is a quarterback's best friend, right? So we're going to think when we talk about some of these other players as well here in a minute, we're going to see that the teams with the struggling offensive lines aren't going to bode well for the quarterbacks. But Corral was on last night. I know Rich is excited. This is Rich's guy. We were talking pregame that he could sit. He could be the first guy taken in the draft. So. Given what we've seen, I think the whole QB class of 2022, I think it's wide open. I really do. I think it's too early to tell. I was watching mock drafts again, looking at some of those, and it's usually Spencer, Rattler, and Howell 1 and 2. But we're going to talk about Corral and Strong and some other guys. So, Rich, what did you think about Corral last night? He's got that gunslinger mentality too.
Yeah. So, like you said, we're not going to overreact, both negative and also positive, right? So I talked about him last week. He has elite arm talent. He has a very strong arm. He's accurate. He showed last night that he can also throw with touch, that throw to the sideline to get it over that linebacker, but enough velocity to get it in there before the safety came over. That showed, like I said, excellent arm talent. It was the decision-making that I was really worried about. He made some excellent decisions last night. If the play wasn't open, he threw it away. We were also talking earlier. He checked it down quite a bit when he had to. So I thought he showed a lot of progress from his decision making from last year. Cool.
Anybody else have any thoughts on the game last night?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in real quick here on. So here's how I feel about Corral. I've been high on him all off season. I wanted to get a share on one of my Devy leagues or one of my only C2C, I should say. Wasn't able to do it. I'm watching the game last night, man, and he's just slinging it all over the yard. And I'm seeing all those things that I wanted to see from him, and I start talking trade with my boy Ryan Ralph. Shout out to Ryan Ralph. He's part of the Devy Dashboard here as well. And I'm like, I got to get this guy on my squad. You know what I mean? So we're talking trade, and I'm trying to figure out, do you want Sam Darnold? Right? I'll throw in AJ Dillon. And the whole time, Corral's just slinging the ball and throwing dimes, man. And I'm just like, just stop for 1 minute, right? Just let me get this trade through before you keep doing that. So, I was able to get the trade. So.
That's good. Hey, if you got to overpay, man. Get your guy. I always say that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk about Keaton Slovis, right? He's a guy that I think the Devy community as a whole is down on. I haven't thrown him to the curb like 95% of the rest of the Devy community. I'm like one of the 5% just to give the guy another opportunity. He was so good his freshman season and the sophomore season, but I put out a tweet. I showed like 3 or 4 plays with him maneuvering in the pocket, extending plays and, setting his feet and firing it downfield. I thought he had a decent performance. He was 25 of 36, 258. 2 TDs. He had no picks. Anyone else watch that USC game? I thought his performance was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was a good showing for Slovis. We all want to see him get back to that form of his freshman year. And the knock on Slovis is always going to be the physical traits. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the best athlete. What makes him a good quarterback is the heady stuff and the fact that he's accurate, and I thought he did a good job of this week. The completion percentage was fine, the yardage was fine. And again, he didn't turn the ball over. So I thought it was encouraging coming off the down year that he had last year to see him get back to his old self. But again, this is a guy that where he's never going to move too far up people's boards, I don't think, because he doesn't have the physical traits that all the other guys he's competing with do. So I do think his ceiling is capped a little bit because of that. But I mean, if he can get back to that form his freshman year, even with that said, I mean, he'll get some solid NFL draft capital and be a guy that's, going to make it onto our dynasty rosters.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think his arm talent, like his arm strength, is versus Mac Jones? I mean, do you think they're comparable? I'm looking at Mac Jones as that guy, the mid-round guy that is, was he going to make it? Was he not? So I think a lot of these third or fourth tier quarterbacks in the 2022 class are, kind of in that group of, are they going to make it? Are they not? I mean, I think Slovis has a lot more maneuverability than Mac Jones. And if he's got it in between the ears and has, above average, maybe not elite arm strength, but he can make the right decisions on the field. I mean, do you think he could get mid-round draft capital?
If he wants to put together a season as stellar as Mac Jones did last year, he could possibly get that draft capital. But I mean, that was a hell of a year Mac Jones had last year. I'm not sure Slovis is going to put together that kind of a season. I think he's playing to try to get into the back end of the first round, but I feel he's a second round prospect.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Is second or third round guys is kind of where I see him at.
Yeah, a lot of guys. Go ahead.
I think he's a day 2 pick. And I last season, I think a lot of his struggles came from that shoulder injury that came out after the season. I think that really hampered him. But he looked good on Saturday. He looked really good.
Now, a guy that's getting a lot of buzz right now is Carson Strong. He was 22 of 39, 312 yards, 2 TDs, and threw a pick. I actually watched that game. And I was impressed, with his ability. The one concern, I think we talked about it maybe on the last show, was just his mobility. I mean, obviously he's got the arm strength. What are your guys' thoughts on Strong? I mean, I'm seeing mock drafts now where he's like the number one guy. I mean, as far as a Devy riser right now, I think people are looking at him that he could possibly be the first guy taken next year if he has a good year. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think this guy gets so much really hype because whenever he throws the ball, he just jumps off the tape. He can make any throw on the football field, and he's got prototypical size for an NFL quarterback. So I think those things alone are why he's such a coveted prospect.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big Strong fan. I think his arm is pretty undeniable, and his accuracy. I watched the game as well. I didn't think he was as accurate as some of the games I saw last year with him. He missed on a few deep shots, but again, that's kind of, is that on the receiver? Is that on the quarterback? We have miscommunications, that kind of thing all the time. So I didn't think it was one of his better games, but he still made some throws that were kind of those wow throws for me. So yeah, I like his arm talent a lot.
He throws a really nice deep ball.
Yeah, I think a few years ago he would have been a contender for the top pick, but with where the NFL's gone now, you've got to have some mobility, and no one has less mobility than Carson Strong. He's kind of like a Jacob Eason to me. Massive arm, statue quarterback. He doesn't have the recruiting pedigree Eason did, but he has much better college production. But to me, he's going to end up that kind of guy. He could have an incredible year and get that capital, but I think he's kind of going to go the way of Jacob Eason, to where we were excited about him. He's going to make it in the league as a backup. He's the dude with a huge arm, but I just don't think he is what the NFL wants nowadays.
Oh, Christian, you make me feel a lot better, because I've been getting kind of roughed up on Twitter talking about, Carson Strong. And he was my film review player in my podcast that I put out, just talking about those concerns. I mean, when you look at him maneuver in the pocket, he can sidestep here and there, but when you ask him to kind of run around or step forward and run around 5-10 feet to the left, he looks uncomfortable running. And I'm just thinking, if he's drafted on a team that has a horrible offensive line, no matter how strong your arm is, I agree. I think he needs mobility. I'm not kind of buying the hype that he's kind of a riser. I'll take Matt Corral and his ability and toughness and, his overall athletic traits.
Yeah, so and one other thing on Corral real quick. What I noticed on Corral was his footwork was incredible, and he was working through his reads so well.
Yep.
Like, from watching Joe Milton quarterback my Vols and just stand still and look at his first read the whole time and then overthrow it. Watching Corral was so refreshing, watching him move his feet in the pocket, work his way through his reads. Right. I'm on board now with the Corral Heisman campaign. Every little detail of that first game was good. That's an improved player that's already in a high volume offense, and he was doing all of the little things right in that first game. So if you weren't higher on Corral than, people were, you need to get on board now. Watch the improvements he made in that first game from last year. They are the little things that get you that capital. So I am personally moving up Corral on one game alone because the footwork and the working through his reads was just perfect, and that's clear improvement from last year. So Corral has definitely stuck out for me.
So Christian, what I hear you saying is that an overpay now that I made is going to be considered an underpay potentially.
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. He's the first player taken in the NFL draft. I mean, this is as wide open as we've seen a quarterback class in a long time. And honestly, we were talking about wanting to see Spencer Rattler look polished. Is that not Matt Corral? Is he not an athletic gunslinger that happens to be doing all the little things right instead of all the little things wrong? So
and he showed the maturity.
I'm on board. Yeah.
He showed the maturity that we wanted, like you said, out of Rattler.
Yeah. So Phil Jerkovich had a nice game, 18 of 27 for 332 yards and 3 TDs. Anyone watch that game? I did not watch that game in full. Did anyone have a chance to kind of look at his film a little bit?
Unfortunately, I didn't catch any of that game.
No.
Yeah, that's one I just box score scouted, but it looks like Jerkovich and Flowers lit it up, and not surprised by that. Those are two guys I really like in this class.
Right. JT Daniels looks like he struggled a little bit. 22 of 30, 135 yards, no TDs and 1 pick. I thought he didn't look very comfortable throughout the game. I thought that his lack of passing options as well kind of hurt him in that game. I think they're going to lean on that running game the majority of the season. What are your guys' thoughts on JT Daniels?
So I have thoughts on him, but I wanted to touch on Jerkovich or Jerkovich, I guess is how you pronounce it. I never know how to pronounce some of these guys' names. Yeah. But, you read it and you're just like, okay, it looks like this, but then you hear an announcer say it. Side note. But I'm actually a big fan of his. I have him ranked fairly high, actually fairly close to Slovis. I think he has all of the physical traits that teams are looking for. He's mobile. He's got a good arm. I wouldn't say he's got a great arm, but it's good. He can make those throws. And him and Zay, man, they just have a great connection. And if he keeps stringing together games like that first game, I think he can absolutely get into the first round conversation.
Yeah, I think he's a sleeper in a lot of guys' eyes as that Zach Wilson riser. For a guy his size, he's a bigger guy. He's got some mobility too. He's not a statue back there. He definitely can move around. He had 5 rushes for 61 yards in the game. So he can kind of hurt you going downfield too. So let's jump over to the 2023 class. Because I think that's where the real excitement was for me anyway, to see the 3 new guys get on the field. Let's start with Bryce Young, 27 of 38, 344, 4 TDs. Of course, he's playing with Bama with the great offensive line and all the receivers, solid running game. I thought he looked really good. I thought he got rid of the ball quickly. I liked his short and intermediate passes. I thought he had a lot of zip on the ball. I think he played smart. What are your guys' thoughts on Bryce Young?
I was really impressed. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, so I think of all of those, of the top 3 for the 2023 guys, he obviously played the best. I mean, in Bama, it's business as usual. Obviously hitting his receivers in stride on time. For a quarterback as mobile as he is, he extends plays, gets out of the pocket, but he doesn't look to run. He's always looking to throw the ball downfield. He's looking for that big play, busted coverage. Right. So that impressed me.
I was real impressed with his maturity. I mean, granted, the game was, 20-0 in a blink of an eye, but he took a couple of big hits early on, and he didn't take any big chances to put his team at risk of making a big turnover. Every throw that was there, he made it. He hit all of his guys in target, and he just seemed so calm and composed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's business as usual, right? I mean, this is what Bama does. They just continue to. You think, we go from, Tua to Mac Jones. Think we're going to have a drop off there. We don't. Now we're going Mac Jones to Bryce Young. And it's just, I mean, this is what they do. They just, it's not something we've seen with them, historically with quarterbacks, but the way they're recruiting now and all that, I think we're going to see a lot more high picks from Bama quarterbacks. So.
I mean, it's becoming a factory.
Yeah, it is. And I agree with you. But at the same time, I think you don't take away what the individual does as well, because, regardless of the support system that you have, he still has to go out there and produce. Let's skip down to DJU, right? And watching that game, I kind of felt for the man. I felt that the moment maybe was a little too big for him. That, he certainly struggled on his first game, making bad decisions. I didn't think he was going through his progressions. Was off target. That pick at the, latter part of the game really hurt them. But, not that I'm going to be dropping him down, but I mean, DJU, in the Devy community, and I wanted to kind of talk about this as a overall thought process, and then we can talk about his individual game and what we saw on the field. But he's like the number one consensus QB for a lot of Devy people. And I've never really understood why that is, given the fact that, we saw him play last year, one game, but now he's got the pressure, right? He's got the pressure of the entire team on your shoulders. Big difference going in a playing in when it was still Lawrence's team. But I talk about it a lot, about the intangibles of these players and the moment. And man, I don't even know at my age if I could go out there and do what he did in the spotlight, in that, and with the pressure and the expectation to follow all of that. But I think from a mental standpoint, he really struggled. What were your thoughts, Christian?
I was shocked. I'm one of those that has him as the top quarterback in Devy, and I wasn't expecting it at all. When he played last year, he wasn't fazed by anything. It was beautiful last year when he played. As a prospect, him and Bryce Young both are some of the highest rated prospects ever covered, period. Right. You're talking top 10 quarterbacks in the history of covering recruiting these guys. So as prospects, these guys are close to flawless. And Bryce Young's a smaller guy. I've had DJU ahead the whole time because he's Ben Roethlisberger with mobility, and more polished throwing the ball, especially at this point in his career. This guy can throw it 80 yards in the air. He can hurt you on the ground, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. And he's at that Clemson program that's given us Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. It's a pretty flawless profile,
Yeah.
And unlike Spencer Rattler, who's a guy, that, gets in his own head and can go off the rails, this isn't one of those guys, so I'm shocked. I really wasn't expecting any of these performances for DJU this year. And, here we are. I'm not concerned. You'll see. I talk about him later as one of the topics we have in this episode, but, I was shocked, but I'm not overly worried.
No, I think it needs to be brought up. The Georgia defense dominated that game.
Absolutely.
They dominated. He had no time. They dominated the offensive line. Those defensive backs dominated the wide receivers. He didn't get any help. Now, obviously, he deserves some of the blame, yes. But that Georgia defense dominated them.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, he looked. Sorry, go ahead, Brendan.
No, I was just going to say the running game, that's out of the big three, Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson, that running game, I think, was a concern, that it's not established. And I'm concerned that if they don't get Will Shipley or somebody really taking the pressure off him by establishing the running game, I think Ohio State and Alabama have a much better ability to have that with the skill levels that they have in their backfield right now. But the starters for Clemson, I don't think is scaring anyone, and they're gonna just make DJU have to beat him in the air. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for him. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You really touched on the same point I was going to make there with the running game, but I also think he looks skittish as far as not taking off and running himself. So maybe they designed some more of those runs for him just to get him kind of comfortable using his mobility and athleticism to his advantage. Because I thought I saw lanes where he could have run. And he didn't, and he took the sack on a lot of those. So, I'd like to see some more of that going forward.
And this isn't so much on him more so than Clemson, but one thing I noticed, that contributed to his struggles is all these Clemson wide receivers are big dudes. They don't have Amari Rodgers anymore. They don't have Travis Etienne anymore. You brought up Will Shipley, Brandon, needing to get involved in the running game. I think they need him catching the short and intermediate passing game. They just have these giant wide receivers and nothing else. I think they need some guys in the middle of the field, and in the backfield they're going to help him out a little bit. I don't think Galloway's that guy really. All their receivers are the same big body guy, so they need one of these smaller guys to step up and help them in the shorter passing game.
Right, and EJ is out for what, 5-6 weeks now.
Yeah.
EJ
Williams.
EJ Williams.
Yeah. Not to comment too much on Georgia's defense. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but I think they just had a perfect game plan, because you think Clemson, their plan was to come out and hit their big, they thought that their receivers were a mismatch. They could hit these big targets and let them do damage after the catch on the outside. Well, Georgia's pass rush was relentless, and and they were suffocating in the run game too. So he just ran into a buzzsaw. I'm not going to knock him too much for how he played. It'll be interesting to see how he bounces back.
Yeah, just 1 week.
And I suppose it has something to do with the injuries as well. But like Georgia's game plan, I thought was weird too. Like JT Daniels is a guy I've criticized for being a little bit of a decaf quarterback, and his ADOT in this game was like 5-6 yards.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he had a high completion percentage, but it was like 135 yards. I mean, they were not letting him air it out like we usually see. There's no Pickens, a bunch of newer guys in there. But I thought it was not the game plan we saw for Daniels at the end of last year either. So just a very odd game to watch. Right. But yeah, I mean, we can't understate Georgia's defense, but
yep.
So let's talk about CJ Stroud a little bit. I think he kind of, first half of the game, he was settling in. Again, the big lights, primetime TV, all the pressure on you. I thought he settled in nicely. Showed, his deep ball accuracy in the first half struggled a little bit, but I thought he really settled in nicely in the second half, at least a little bit. But I mean, were you guys disappointed with his overall, first performance?
I mean, he looked like a very talented quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience, to be very simple.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed at all. I mean, he the first half was kind of rough, and it had the feel a little bit like with DJU, where you're kind of expecting him to catch fire at some point. And he did, in the second half, but he had 4 touchdowns and he really kind of got into his stride. So I was more encouraged than disappointed overall.
Yeah, a couple things for him early on. I think it was his third throw. He just missed Garrett Wilson on a big play.
I saw.
I think if he completes that pass, he settles in a little bit sooner. Then throw in the rain, and then also a big thing for him and also Howell. Both of them were playing on the road. I don't think we can. The crowds were insane. We got to remember that there were no fans last year. So that could have delayed him settling in.
Yeah. All right, the last guy I want to kind of talk about in the 2023 class was Hudson Card. I did a film breakdown on him. I'm going to be putting that out on the YouTube channel. I was impressed. 14 to 21, 224, 2 TDs, 0 picks. I thought Hudson Card for his first play did a really nice job. I thought he was, showed his mobility in the pocket. I really liked his velocity on his short and intermediate throws. He had some deep, nice passes he didn't really connect with. But I thought for a first performance, I was really impressed. I know there's a lot of people in the Devy community that have him. I actually traded him straight up for Sam Darnold last year when one of my NFL leagues that I was kind of, had no chance of really winning. So I got a few shares of him. But I was impressed with Hudson Card. That's the game that I'm looking forward to watching this upcoming weekend to see how he improves on that second game. But again, he's got that great running game. Doesn't have elite receivers, but he's got that great running game that is going to really help him, I think, use play action and increase his stock. But I thought Hudson Card, had a nice game. Anyone else watch that Texas game?
Yeah, I was excited to see Cards.
Yeah, yep.
Go ahead, man.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I think he solidified himself as that, that QB1. There was talk he was in a battle. A lot of the stuff I heard all spring, is he looks good, but not great. We kind of don't know what to expect from him. And I thought he stepped up and lived in the moment and performed really well, given the expectations with Texas, with Sarkisian coming in with Bijan behind him. You know what I mean? That slant route he hit to Bijan, that was a thing of beauty. I was impressed and really encouraged by his performance.
Yeah, I was really excited. I mean, this is a young guy making his first start against, let's not forget this team was ranked, UL.
Yeah.
And he spread the ball out pretty well. He was pretty efficient, and he's only going to get better.
Yeah. Did you want to pipe in, Christian? I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, in the Devy community, Sark's one of those coaches where we want his quarterback, especially after what we just saw him do with Mac Jones. And I think most of us wanted Hudson Card to win this job, due to the talent and the dual threat ability. And like you mentioned, the running back talent that Bijan is, he can get whatever he wants to off of play action. In this game, Bijan also showed us that he's capable in the passing game. I think he had 73 receiving yards in the passing game as well. The big game from Whittington. If he starts running as well, I mean, Hudson Card's a guy that's going to be putting up some big numbers in that Sarkeesian offense, given the fact that he has the best running back in the country in his backfield. And then Xavier Worthy only had one catch, but that was a nice catch. That 34-yarder, got us excited. And, I think Texas's receiving corps will come together. But with Card and Bijan in the backfield, I think they're set for the next couple of years to, keep that upward trend with Sark leading the way.
Yeah, I'd agree. The last guy I want to talk about was really a 2024 prospect, J McCarthy. I thought looked good. Everyone was kind of going, was really impressed with that across the hash throw that he made in that game. But any thought you think of him taking over that job for McNamara anytime soon?
I tend to think he made that play to make a statement like, look what I can do. It wasn't the best play, but I think all of us are like, man, that was impressive. Whether the coaches are mad at him or not, they're having a conversation about it saying, man, did you see that? So I think it was a good move by him, and I do tend to think it was intentional. So good by him. I think it's going to end up getting him in there sooner rather than later, because that's some immense talent he displayed on that one play.
Yeah, it really was. I was happy for him to get in there and do that. So, all right, let's go to our stock watch segment. All right, we'll get off the quarterbacks and we're going to go around the horn. Christian, why don't you talk about your stock watch player for this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to still be Zach Charbonnet. So I talked about him last week after that opening day game, and everyone's like, I don't know, but we'll see if he can do it against LSU. And guess what? He did it against LSU again. If you're not on board with the fact that Zach Charbonnet is back yet, I just don't know what to tell you. Like I said, this guy has the NFL size. He's 220 pounds. And I mean, we've watched him 2 weeks in a row. I mean, everything that he's demonstrating as a running back is just incredible. His burst is awesome. He's averaging over 10 yards a carry for sure. I think I pulled these up because I knew I had to talk about him. He has 17 carries for 223 yards and 4 touchdowns, has over 100 yards through the air as well. I mean, he's splitting the backfield with Brown right now, and it doesn't even matter. Chip Kelly was raving about him too as the most talented back that he's coached. So my thing with Charbonnet was, this is a guy that a lot of people were skeptical to buy last week. And I was like, hey, I was the only buy. Like, go ahead and buy him. The stock's going to continue to go up. And the reason for that is there's only 2 backs in this class we have firmly entrenched. Brandon, the resident Eric Gray hater, was rejoicing on that 9 for 27. So
my goodness.
As we've talked about, the RB3 is wide open in this class. Yep. I mean, we can go 10 guys deep that can be the third running back in this class. And right now, my money is on Zach Charbonnet. I think if we were redrafting right now, I think Zach Charbonnet is probably the third back taken that's 22 eligible. So, I mean, it may be too late now. He did it against an SEC team, but, I think we're going to see Zach Charbonnet in the second round of the NFL draft if he keeps this up, because he has that 220-pound frame. And, I mean, his athleticism looks pretty good to me so far. So,
yeah, he's got some really good lateral movement too. So, yeah, I think his stock up for sure. So, all right, Daniel, who's your stock watch segment player?
So I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. When I watch Zay, I see a guy that looks like the type of guy that NFL teams are targeting right now. He's not the biggest guy, but he's shifty, and he's a hell of a route runner, man. I was watching that game, that little toe tap catch he had, on that post route. That was a thing of beauty. And when I watch him, I see a little bit of Devontae Smith in his game. That's what I see, anyways. And I think he probably has more speed than Devontae. Look, get on the Zay train right now. Anybody listening right now, that's what I'm saying, because I think his stock is going to continue to rise. I don't know if he'll get into the first round, but I could easily see second round draft capital for Zay. So that's my guy.
Hey, Joe, what's your guy? I was really excited about your selection, because this is a guy that we've been waiting for 3 years to emerge. And I haven't watched his tape yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was really on the fence about who to pick this week because there were so many good performances out there. But, the Devy community has been really excited about Wandel Robinson, really since he was a recruit. He was a high-profile guy. Initially, some people had some questions about how well he would fit in Nebraska, and that team is and has been a mess, for years now. So him going to Kentucky, I wasn't sure how he would fit, but man, talk about a performance. This guy this guy's electric. You just get this guy the ball, and he's going to do some damage. I mean, he's primarily a receiver. I know there was some talk when he was recruited that he might be a running back, but this guy's just a weapon. I mean, you get him the ball, and he is going to do some damage. And he had a great performance against who did Kentucky play? Do you guys remember? Anyways,
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, it was a poor team.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of those poor teams.
Will Levis looks really good too, but I mean, Wandel was making those guys look foolish out there.
Yeah, I'm excited to look at his film. I don't know if did he win vertical or was it a lot of short area kind of yak yards?
A few of them were vertical, but he caught some balls deep down the field and
Cool.
and took some hits and kept running. It was pretty impressive.
I was thrilled to see him used down the field. It was beautiful. And I hate Kentucky, but I love that they're treating Wandel right.
I only saw one play. They hit him on a deep crossing route. It was beautiful.
I think that calls for a deep dive game film.
I think
I'm gonna write that down.
I think he was like 12 for 145 and maybe 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Just don't tell us that you hate him.
No, I won't. I won't.
He would never.
No.
No.
I've always liked Wandel Robinson. I've always been so disappointed that he's never emerged. I mean, I'm so glad he got out of that Nebraska hellhole over there and finally got on a team. Hey, Rich. So who's your guy, Rich? Your stock watch player.
Yeah, so my stock watch player was going to be Matt Corral, but I talked about him last week. We talked about him earlier.
Never enough Matt Corral talk.
This is true. I'm going to shift to another guy that I'm really high on, and that I've been pumping up a little bit. And then I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Talia Tagaviola, from the quarterback from Maryland. So I really wasn't interested in him. I watched 2 games in the offseason from last year. And it was just kind of put it casually on, and he made a throw, and it kind of made me sit up in my chair. I was like, this is interesting. So he has extremely good arm strength. He has good accuracy. He's mobile. He's extremely fast. And this week they played West Virginia. He went 26 for 36, 332 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he obviously has really good receiving weapons in Raheem Jarrett, and then I'm drawing a blank. Demas, who Demas is probably an NFL talent wide receiver. So there were a few throws where they were wide open, but he still hit them in stride, and he impressed me a lot. So that's somebody that I'm just kind of keeping an eye on, and I think that by the end of the season, if he continues to play well, then I think he can rise up some boards, potentially day 2 draft pick. And if he doesn't, he can always come back next year. But I'm interested in his traits, his tools.
That's cool. Yeah, I think he looked pretty good. I actually did game films of both of those receivers this afternoon, so we'll be putting them out. But yeah, he did throw some really nice passes down the field. So my guy is I kind of changed it here at the last minute because I kind of forgot about this player, but I'm going to go with Blake Quorum. Now, I don't know if Blake Quorum is going to be a guy who is going to translate to the NFL, but this is a kid that I've always liked. He obviously playing for Michigan. Last year, he really didn't do much, man, but he had a breakout game, 11 attempts, 111 yards, 7.9, yards a carry, TD, and he caught a ball too. And I'm just excited to see, I know he's sharing the backfield with Haskins, but I don't know. I like his skill set, man. He's 5'8", 200, so he's a little on the smaller side. But from a stock standpoint, I think he's going to end up being the lead back for at least first half of the season. I know that a lot of guys think Edwards is going to be out there and is going to take that job. I know everyone loves that guy coming out, the 2024 prospect. But Blake Quorum, I think, showed his strength. He's really jacked up over the season. He looks a lot stronger. I think he's shifty. I'm just interested to see him. He's a player that I've always liked. Like I said, I don't know if he's going to make it to the NFL. But Blake Quorum is a guy that I was excited to see break out. I got him in every C2C league. So I'm excited just to see from at least a stock segment, if it's not an NFL prospect, at least from a C2C standpoint, I think he could be a regular play in your rosters. So, all right, let's go to the burning question of the week. And so which player do we think is going to bounce back after a poor week 1 performance? So Daniel, why don't you take us away first on this one?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with your guy, Brandon, Eric Gray.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know what to say, man. I was expecting a lot more out of Eric Gray. I'm an Eric Gray guy, and I was expecting him to kind of seamlessly fit in to that Oklahoma offense, and it seemed like a perfect fit. I thought he was going to make plays. It didn't happen. He was flat out bad, man. Like 80s Bob Dylan bad, and that might be an insult to Bob Dylan because 80s Bob Dylan wasn't all bad. No, it was bad, and 9 for 27 rushing, one catch for -6 yards. But I do think he can bounce back in a big way. I still think he's a great fit in that offense. I think the whole Oklahoma offense was out of sync. You know what I mean? They weren't gelling the way I thought they would against Tulane, and it was just a bad game for him. I expect that once he gets a little bit more comfortable in that system, it was his first game in that Lincoln Riley system. I think he'll have some much better performances down the road. So I'm hoping it's next week or this weekend.
Yeah, and for the record, for Eric Gray, it's not that I dislike the player a whole lot. I just, where people value him is the RB3 in this class, I just can't get behind given his size. I know he's elusive and stuff like that. It's just like exactly what Christian was talking about. Give me Charbonnet, who's got the size to be able to pound in between the tackles in the NFL. I mean, if you just look at the history, guys 205 and under typically, aren't bell cows in the NFL. There's maybe only one or two of them. But I'm concerned a little bit that Brooks is going to really take the majority of the carries in this offense. Anyone else have that concern?
Absolutely, that's a concern. I think they'll utilize both. I do think that Eric Gray will get more involved in the passing game at the very least, and showcase his receiving abilities.
Yeah, he did score on that touchtouchdown too before Khalib Williams came in, and so they should have replayed it. But I mean, why do that? But yeah, you might get a lot of those TDs vultured away from him. So, Joe, who's your guy?
I picked Treylon Burks not because he necessarily played bad. Arkansas played Rice, and the offense looked a little bit out of sync in the first half. And I'm pretty sure that he was playing a little banged up. I think there was a lot of doubt about whether he would actually play or not. I mean, he caught 5 balls for 42 yards, which, if you look at the stat sheet and think this guy played the whole game, it's pretty disappointing. But I think we all know he's better than that, and I think he will be a big, big, big part of if Arkansas has any chance to hang with Texas this weekend.
But I like it. Yeah, he should.
Real quick there, just to defend my boy Burks and to trash out an SEC team that's potentially worse than Tennessee. Burks had 42% of the team receptions and 33% of the team receiving yards. So he was still pretty dominant within Arkansas just because they were so bad. So he still did his thing as far as his piece of the pie. So
what is up with that offense, man? They it's like, who's designing these plays? It's really bad.
It was bad.
I think KJ Jefferson limits them a little bit, at least in the start. I'm hoping that maybe he can settle himself in. I mean, obviously he's a running threat, but hopefully he can settle himself in to where he can at least support those receivers.
12 completions. 12.
Yeah, it was rough.
That is rough. So my guy was Jermaine Burton. This past week, Corey Pira from the Dashboard, you guys know him. He's on the Slack chat all the time. Him and I did a film breakdown, which we'll be putting out, where we really broke down all of his traits, his route running and play strength and, all the good stuff. And he's a really good receiver. I'm really high on him. Corey's been a lot higher on him than I have, but he kind of turned me on to him. I think Jermaine Burton has the ability to definitely translate to the NFL. He caught 2 balls for 11 yards. Now he's only practiced 10 days out of the entire spring. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. I believe it's an ankle injury, but he hasn't been 100%. I think that whole Georgia offense was still trying to find its identity last week, but I think Jermaine Burton will bounce back. They play UAB this week, so it's a great rebound game for him to get out and make some plays. But for that Georgia team to be successful, to me, Jermaine Burton has to be an alpha out there to help move the chains for JT Daniels, or it's going to be a long season for Georgia. I mean, they can't just continue to try and run the ball with Zamir White and Kendall Milton, and we did a film grind on Kendall Milton too, so that'll be coming out very shortly as well. We did 2 Georgia players this week, me and Corey. But Jermaine Burton is a great player. I think he's been banged up. He's been limited in practice. So I think he's my bounce back player for if it's not this week, it might not be this week until he's fully healed from that ankle injury. But I think he's the guy that could bounce back big time, here in the next few weeks. So, Richard,
I'm a big fan of Burton.
Yeah. Who you got, Rich?
Yeah, so somebody that we were all excited to see play this past weekend was Troy Franklin.
Yeah,
he got listed as the starter on the depth chart, but he didn't do anything. I think towards the end of the week he got a little nicked up. That could have played a factor into it. But I mean, Oregon's going to need him to be effective if they have any chance of beating Ohio State. So I'm hoping leading into this game this weekend he gets healthy and he can do some things against those cornerbacks. Minnesota wide receivers looked fairly comfortable against those defensive backs for a good amount of that game. So if he's healthy, I think that he can have a really good game. Hopefully Anthony Brown can get him the ball.
Yeah, he was somebody I think we're all excited about. Everyone was tweeting that him and I think Xavier Worthy were the only 2024 receivers, on the unofficial depth charts as starters. So everybody was kind of exciting, expecting a breakout for sure. So Christian, why don't you wrap up this segment? Who was your bounce back player after a poor week 1 performance?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. And I won't talk at length about him because we talked about him quite a bit earlier. But, I mean, this is a guy that I deem as a pretty flawless prospect. He's one of the best pedigreed recruits we've ever seen. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He's got a tremendous arm. He's mobile. He's at that Clemson program. I mean, I don't know. Rich don't like it, but
No, I'm laughing at a comment on the side. My bad.
Yeah, we were laughing at a comment. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But I was really impressed.
Sorry.
I have to say, Christian, I'm really impressed how well you said his last name. Can you all educate us again one more time on how to say that? Because that was the most elegant way I think I've ever heard
I
it
could
said.
be wrong, but I say DJ Uiagalelei.
Wow.
Hey, I'll tell you what, you said that, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe impressed me.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, that N sneaks in there just a smidge. You got to drop it in there just a little bit. But I could be wrong, but I'm at least going to try. I at least want to try to pronounce this guy's right. I do know that the wide receiver for Nevada is Romeo Dobbs, not Dubs, not Doobs. It's actually pronounced Dobbs.
Is it Dobbs? Oh man,
it's Dobbs.
I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
I was so worried about it when I did my Group of 5 episode. I looked for interviews and I found him saying his own last name, and he said Dobbs.
Nice.
So. Yeah.
Nice.
Hey guys, so how concerned are we going to be if DJU has another mediocre performance next week? Do we hit the panic button then?
That's a good question.
I won't personally. Yeah, I won't personally. I believe too much in the prospect that he is, and he has a whole nother year to still be Clemson's quarterback. So, we could have a rough go this year, and he could win the Heisman next year and all as well. Yeah. So, I'm not going to overreact too much. I believe too much in the physical traits and the head on his shoulders and the program he's at. Like, he has too much going for him for me to panic early on.
I mean, the stuff that he showed against Notre Dame last year at Notre Dame. I mean, that's enough for me to give him leeway. Yeah, I mean, that game last year was incredible, and against a very, very good defense, So I think he gets a little bit of a couple of potentially poor games for me.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to say there too, because I see a lot of people critical of like, oh, you can't move this person ahead of your rankings over 1 game or 2 games. The guys that we've never seen play college football before. That first time playing college football is kind of a big deal. Up until then, it's just completely, how'd they look in Elite 11 camp? How'd they look in 7-on-7? How's their high school film? Once you actually see a player start a game in college, you should, make some decisions at that point, because this is the first actual evidence you see of them being a player. So if you had, Bryce Young right there with DJU, and the only thing that had DJU ahead of him was the Notre Dame performance last year, Bryce Young just put up just as good of a performance. So now you can truly evaluate them on an even playing scale, because you don't have that 1 game that DJ had on him. So, don't jerk your rankings around like crazy after 2 weeks. But if it's your first time seeing a prospect play college football, that's new data that you have that you didn't have before.
Yeah. I was going to say, if he has another subpar performance, I'm buying all day long, because that would be a good time to kind of jump in and see if you can get a bit of a discount on him.
Yeah, I think you got to give especially for these new guys, these 2023 QBs, you got to give them 4 or 5 games to settle in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big transition. People expect too much. People are just expecting these guys, regardless of the program they go into, that they're just supposed to be, we've seen a lot of high prospects in the past not make it. Not saying that that's what's going to happen with these 3. I'm talking about CJ Stroud, DJ, and Bryce Young. But I think before anybody can make any assessment on their values going up or down, you need to at least give them 3 or 4 weeks. That's just my personal opinion before making any rash decision on changing anything. But definitely agree with you, Christian, on the first game for a lot of players that we see emerge. And yeah, definitely, I think after 1 week or 2 or 3, especially, you can start making those adjustments, especially for those mid guys that are like, wow, they're really popping. Or, who was that kid that played last night from Ole Miss who popped? The Drummond, or is that his name?
Drummond,
yeah.
junior college guy.
Yeah.
So I mean, like now everyone's going to be like, okay, well, let's put this guy on our radar list. Let's get him in the pipeline.
Mingo would have been my pick to lead that. And
exactly.
I think you liked another guy too. You liked Braylon better.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, he can't stay hurt. I mean, he's hurt all the time. But again, for those vacated target opportunities, it's always exciting to see that. But for a guy like that, yeah, we're going to move him up. We're going to put him in that lower tier and start wide. Now, if he comes out again and plays and has another 100-yard game and looks like he's Matt Corral's, number 1 target, then I think then we've got maybe something. We've seen seniors before. I believe he's a senior.
Yeah. It's rare, but you got a guy like Brandon Ayuk right now making waves in the pro. That's a junior college guy. So they're few and far between, but it's happening right now with Ayuk. So
that's right.
And
maybe.
Well, especially if somebody like that. I mean, he could have been sitting behind Elijah Moore. You know what I mean? And now that Moore is gone, he fits really well into that position. And now he's exceeding. Now he's excelling.
Right.
And here's the thing about Corral too. Like one more thing on Corral. Like Corral has a new cast of guys there at Ole Miss, kind of right. Like Sam Howell has the same thing, and like we saw how he looked. So that's what concerns me is like Howell has a new cast of guys, and that's how he looked. Corral has a new class, group of guys, and that's how he looked. Like this is a big difference. Sam Howell's going to have to right that ship. Howell's a guy that averaged 34 touchdowns and 7 picks his first 2 years in college, and I think he's going to struggle to reach those numbers this year. So he's going to have to put some good games on tape, or he's going to lose some stock because that 34 and 7 average was the first 2 years, and now that he doesn't have a whole collection of NFL talent, if that regresses too much, like we saw Slovis from freshman year to sophomore year, that's bad news for Sam Howell, especially with guys like Matt Corral and Malik Willis rising up boards, Yeah,
and I think we have to keep in mind, I think context matters too. Situation matters. I mean, North Carolina's offensive line is nowhere near Ole Miss's line, and Ole Miss at least has Ely and that Snoop Connor guy running around. And that Parrish kid who is making plays down the field too. And I mean, at North Carolina backfield, we all think Khalib Hood is going to be the guy or whoever it's going to be. But I'm going to go back to that running game. I think context matters a little bit, but I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, they both have challenges in front of them, and it's who's going to be able to overcome those challenges in the eyes of NFL scouts is going to be just a fascinating storyline. This whole 2022 QB race. I think it's a freaking horse race until December.
It's exciting. I mean, I'm excited to watch it.
I'm really excited.
It is.
And here's the thing: we're going to see the week up, stock down. I mean, this thing's going to come down to the end, and then it'll come down to somebody's going to make some waves at the combine. I mean, this is going to come down to like the day before the NFL draft. I think it's
wide open.
Yeah, it's going to be fun tracking the week to week, stock share. If we put out a poll every single week, who's the top quarterback in this class, we'll probably have 6 or 7 different answers throughout the year.
We should create something like that. Just to touch on Hal real quick, I was gonna, we talked about Elijah Moore leaving and how big of a gap that left for him, but even more to the point, man, losing Javonte and Michael Carter, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. I mean, those guys were huge for them last year. So that's a big
and both
loss,
of their
man.
receivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome both.
Yeah. And they're going to say, you know what, Sam? The defensive coordinator is going to say, beat us, pal, because we're not scared of anything else on the field except for you. So they're going to take everything away from him.
And I mean, with North Carolina, they had Josh Downs, but they were missing Coffrey Brown. They were missing who's the other one? Corrales? Bo Corrales? Is that so? I mean,
yeah, it's a good point. I think if he doesn't have all of his weapons there.
Yeah, if they get Corrales back soon, and if they get Coffrey Brown back soon, he's somebody that flashed last year. Right. He can get open down the middle of the field. So I mean, he was just only had Josh Downs, and I mean his running back is Ty
Right.
Chandler. Christian,
Right.
you know about Ty Chandler.
He's just a guy.
Yeah, and I mean their offensive line, they got dominated.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we're being harder on Sam Howell than others because we've seen him throw 68 touchdown passes in college. I mean, we have seen top shelf production on this guy 2 years in a row. So we're holding him to a higher standard because we've seen it for a long time.
Yeah. Did you guys expect Corral to be more affected by the loss of Elijah Moore? Because I kind of touched on that and then segued into Howell losing those running backs. I thought that was going to be, maybe felt a little bit more early in the season.
I thought it would take a little bit longer for him to find his go-to target. I didn't expect Drummond to be it right off the bat. But I mean, he only really lost more. You know what I mean? He had Mingo and Sanders last year, and he also had Drummond. But I think he found his go-to receiver a lot faster than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. I expected just a little slower out of the gate. Yeah. And I mean, I thought he looked better in this first game than he did last year. About in a lot of ways. So I'm on board. He clearly put in the work, and he's an improved player. And even not having an Elijah Moore, I think he's going to put he's going to wherever is it still in New York? He's going to be a Heisman finalist somewhere. And his biggest competition's honestly probably Bryce Young at Bama. I mean, is Bama going to have games that don't look like that this year? I mean, I don't think so.
Question for the group, right? So Bam is up huge against Miami. The game is sealed. Why is Bryce Young still in the game?
I had the same exact question. I mean, you're risking injury with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was too long. I mean, granted, if Saban wants him to be a Heisman contender, by all means, put up the fat stats. But you got to get him out of there at a certain point. I mean, Miami was getting embarrassed. I mean, you got to get – I didn't understand it, but –
yeah, it didn't make much sense. I mean, you saw, you even saw a guy like Grayson McCall come out. I think he was out after halftime. Did he only play that? I think he only played the first half. Yeah, I mean, and it's risking that injury. That's a big gamble, with your franchise level college quarterback there.
Huge risk.
Well, our last segment, we talk about week 2 games, but I think we're going to pass because they're really shitty. They really are. Ohio State versus Oregon is probably going to be the game that everyone has got their eyes on, but the rest of them, I guess they're getting all the lopsided games over with early in the season, which is probably a good thing as far as the schedule makers are concerned. So we have the better games towards the end of the season. But any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up tonight? It's been a great live feed, my first one. So I think it went pretty well. I think it's recording. I see it on YouTube, so I think it worked.
Awesome. Yeah, this was a ton of fun. I look forward to doing more of these for sure.
Really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. Who knows what week 2 has in store with all these cupcakes, but I'm sure we'll find some things to talk about.
Oh, we will.
Yeah. Sure. Hey, individual performances, man. There's going to be
on the game. There's
going to be a lot of guys we're watching.
On the game I had listed, I had no players listed to talk about, so I'll throw it out there. Miami's on upset alert this week against Appalachian State. Watch it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Interesting. Yeah. They're known for those upsets, aren't they?
They're going to have a little hangover from the Bama beat down, and Appalachian State's going to go down there and get them.
Who was it that Appalachian State beat a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago? That was like a big deal. Was it Michigan?
They beat Michigan. That was 15 years ago, man. That was
not 15 years ago, man. Come on.
I was in high school. Yeah, that was easily 15 years ago.
Oh man, where does time go? I don't know.
Yeah,
but did they have another one? I thought they had another one.
Hey, but don't forget, Chase Bryce is Appalachian State's quarterback, former Clemson quarterback. So we've got some ACC experience. I'm telling you, Miami's on upset alert this week.
All day.
Watch Miami win by 45, and the joke's on me. But you heard it here first.
Putting some money on it, Christian.
Yeah. Hey, bet the under.
All right, guys. It's been great. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, guys.